expect to find nuggets of molten gold. It's rich, but not that rich. And here ain't the place to dig. It comes from someplace further up. Up there. Up there's where we got to go. Up there.
Cinematic Fantastic.
Atu, Barada, Nikto.
I'll show you who I am and what I am.
By a werewolf and lives, becomes a werewolf himself.
Open the pod bay doors, Hal.
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
It's alive! It's alive! It's alive!
Hello and welcome to the Cinematic Fantastic Podcast. I'm your host, Jason Weatherford.
And your other host, William Weatherford.
Get ready for opinions, dad jokes,
and bad jokes
as we watch and review sci-fi and fantasy films from the classics of yesteryear to the new favorites of today.
If you wanted something to do in between seasons,
when you're missing us dearly and life feels uneven,
we'll stop on by and give you a lift. Brought you a present.
You brought you a gift.
This is a bonus episode, little bit different from the ones you know.
4 theme movies in a row. Welcome to the bonus. Thankful that you joined us. Now here's the bonus episode.
How's it going, listeners? It's me, Jason, and
and it's me, William.
Yeah, I thought you were going to say.
And it's me, William.
Hey, welcome back to another episode.
And it's me, William.
I get it. We're a little loopy right now, sorry. I want to welcome you back to another episode of Cinematic Fantastic. We are firmly ensconced in our Cinematic Classics theme month. These theme months, if you guys really like them, or even if you don't, we still think we're going to do it. We're going to do some more in the future that I think you'll really like. But we have been having a good time going through some of these classics that don't quite fit the mold of science fiction or fantasy, but are just really memorable to me and have stuck in my head and just set up shop and live there. We talked about the movies in this series so far have been Fritz Lang's M. We've also we just got done doing Citizen Kane.
And today we are doing the sort of Western, sort of noir, probably could say more Western, Treasure of the Sierra Madre.
Treasure of Sierra Madre, yes. But William has done a lot of research on this movie.
And I hope it pays off.
I definitely know it's going to pay off. But Treasure of the Sierra Madre, I'll tell you, okay, let me just tell you real quick. This is why I chose the film, or I put it out there and to see if William might like it. I didn't see this movie early in my life. I really didn't. I've heard of some of the lines in it, but I didn't really watch it. I was missing out. Now, you're going to think I'm silly, but I read an article that said that the design for Indiana Jones with his fedora and his khaki shirt and his kind of grizzled 5 o'clock shadow of Harrison Ford was patterned after the character of Fred C. Dobbs, played by Humphrey Bogart.
Snakes. Why did it have to be snakes?
In this movie. Steven Spielberg said, and George Lucas said that it kind of inspired the way they make Indiana Jones look. He's not clean shaven. He's got kind of that grizzly, and also he's hunting for treasures, right?
As long as he's not swapping anything with a paper bag full of sand.
No. Oh, that's right. That's right. Both Fred C. Dobbs and Indiana Jones both held bags full of sand or soil or whatever, trying to get gold, right? That's about where the comparisons end, okay? I think the comparisons end there, but that's what made me want to watch it. I was like, let me give this one a shot, and I watched it and went, this is really good.
Yeah, don't read a book by its cover, because when you jump into this movie, you will see a great tale about paranoia and greed out amidst trying to get gold and, keep your gold to oneself or steal someone else's gold.
It's also about trust. Yeah.
And it's also got really great complex characters that our director John Huston really likes to do.
Yeah, he did that with a lot of other his films. I'm sure you'll go over it. Let me just give my thumbnail. we can wait on this till the end if you want to, but I wanted to give my little thumbnail. I think this movie is really great. Now, I don't think we have the problem we had with Citizen Kane where everybody and their mama in the world of movie reviewers and critique or whatever, they always say it's the greatest film of all time. I don't think people say that about The Treasure of Sierra Madre, and that's fine.
Oftentimes, this is like, one of people's most favorite movies.
Yes.
Kind of thing. This is one of Stanley Kubrick's favorite. You got Sam Raimi.
Yeah,
who likes this film.
The guy who directed Spider-Man and Doctor Strange, the Multiverse of Madness, all those, yeah.
Yes.
Here is a quote from director Martin Scorsese.
I think we were talking to Ilya Kazan in New York about something. We'd shown one of his films, and we were talking, and he just sat back afterwards, and I think we'd screened Wild River, a film of his, and he was criticizing it, and he says, but you know what? He said, it's just one of those things. Isn't it great? We're in the business that made The Treasure of Sierra Madre. Isn't that exciting?
From the surface, you'd sort of be like, it seems like it could be a B movie or something, but it's not really.
Yeah, don't think of it as a Western. I think that if you're like, I don't like Westerns, no, give this one a shot. I don't think it fits the mold of most Westerns. It does have gunplay in it. It's got horses. It's got a desert.
But it's not, rootin' tootin' high noon.
Yeah.
Stopping bandits.
There are some bandits. Honestly, it's a multi-layered story, but it's simple. It starts with a simple premise, and then it takes humans and their differing moralities and the baggage they bring, and just says to them, go. And it puts them in the plot.
Though some might say that Humphrey Bogart is not human.
He is human. He's a very This is not his normal, role, though. He usually he plays like, dark kind of complex individuals, but this is probably one of the first times we've seen Humphrey Bogart play something really skeezy. Would you agree? I mean, honestly, you have to see some more Humphrey Bogart movies to kind of judge his performance in these.
This movie also does have a bunch of famous Humphrey Bogart lines. Can you spare an American a meal?
I thought it was steak and who said?
Could you steak? Yes. Could you steak an American a meal?
Steak a fellow American to a meal.
That's a pretty famous line.
Yeah, what about the one from the Mexican bandit, Gold Hat?
There's also badges. We don't need no stinking badges.
Badges? We ain't got no badges. We don't need no badges. I don't have to show you any stinking badges.
That's a famous one.
It's not exactly said that way, but again, we all remember things a little bit different. But I think it got parodied in Mel Brooks's Blazing Saddles, but they did the quote wrong, but it's fine.
Here's your badge. Badges? We don't need no stinking badges.
But it's voted as the number 36 movie quote by the American Film Institute.
The most quoted movie? Or yes. The most famous movie?
36 movie quote.
There's the AFI top 100 movies of all time. It's not in there, is it? Or is it?
It is number 30 on the AFI's 100 Years, 100 Movies, the 100 Greatest American Movies of All Time list.
Well, these are movie quotes.
Okay, well, yeah, I don't know where it sits in terms of, like you said, I know a lot of directors and people that enjoy films that just are really into this movie now, or it's just one of their their pleasures. Like they're like, I want to watch a good movie and just sit back and enjoy. And this is one of the ones that they pull out and put on. William, you've done some digging, you've done some sifting through the dirt of Mother Earth to look for golden nuggets of this film's production. What did you find, and can I have a share? Pretty good. I just came up with that. Is that good or no? Is that not bad?
That's pretty good. So
I'm trying to do a segue, yeah.
The Sierra Madre is a unique film because it was filmed in Tampico, Mexico, which is very cool because it's an American movie being filmed out all the way in Mexico. It's pretty cool. It's probably not necessarily the Sierra Madre mountains, but
didn't they film two other places? Durango? They filmed some
maybe.
Yeah, Durango and then one other place. So was it famous for being one of the first movies to be filmed outside of the U.S. or something? Is that right?
Yes. That was what I was saying.
Yeah.
So John Huston based this off of a novel by B. Traven. That's his full name because it's a pen name. It's just B. Traven. Well, what does B stand for? Does it stand for Bart? We'll never know.
That's a pen name for the author, right? Like it's not his real name.
Yes, it's not his real name.
Right.
And he's like, this would be very great material for a movie. And it would be very cool if his father was in the main role. He did get in the movie, but not like the main role, I don't think.
He's probably one of my favorite characters in the movie because he's so quick with the dialogue.
He's a great character, Howard.
He is. I have theories after watching this movie a couple times. I have some theories about the characters. I'll talk to you about them. I think after I go over the plot, I have some kind of deeper meaning that I don't know if anybody else came up with, but I kind of see it when I watch the movie. Yeah, hey, I love Walter Houston's his name. I love him. He is the father of the director.
Yes, he is. And he's like, he'd be perfect for the role of the main guy. So he's coming back from The Maltese Falcon, which is like classic film noir. So he's just like, woo, man, I'm gonna do something cool too, as well.
He did a lot of movies with Humphrey Bogart. Have you noticed that? Like 3 or 4 or 5.
Yes, he did. They did take a liking to each other sometime back. I think Humphrey Bogart was in the Maltese Falcon.
It is a good movie. I've seen it. Yeah.
So he cast him for Fred C. Dobbs, and I don't think Bogart really ended up liking his role or something, because he's like, wait till you see me in my next picture. I'm the worst person you ever saw.
Oh, so he did admit that he didn't really like playing that type, because he is playing a little bit against type, because he's usually kind of this damaged, but kind of at least somewhat moral guy. He may be sad, but Fred Dobbs is, he's something else.
Yes, he is. Apparently on seeing Walter Houston's performance, Bogart said, 1 Houston is bad enough, but 2 are murder.
Yeah, I'll tell you this. There is a connection between the movie we previously did in the previous episode to the Citizen Kane. Orson Welles had a working relationship off and on again with John Huston. John Huston was also a screenwriter and wrote a lot of different scripts and things like that as well. But he was also kind of a guy who liked a nice cigar and liked a little, liked to drink a little bit, and he's very creative and very. He's a character. He also acted in Orson Welles' last movie that he never finished making until I think they finished after Orson Welles died, and John Huston's in that, and he plays a character that honestly I think is kind of based on Orson Welles a little bit. So there's a connection between the 2 movies we just did. Well, one we just did just recently.
Bruce Bennett.
Bruce Bennett. Who did Bruce Bennett play?
Cody. He was the 4th guy that came along.
Oh, that guy. The guy who you were like, why did you have to show up? Yeah, in the movie, if you guys watch this, there's a character that shows up and you're like, oh no. Because he's not part of the main 3 that you see mostly in this movie. He shows up and you know that it's a threat to what they're doing out there on the mountain, which is prospecting for gold. And they split everything 3 ways, and now you got one other guy that shows up and goes, well, split it with me too, and maybe I won't go tell on you. We'll talk about that in the plot, but
yeah.
So did Bruce Bennett, what was Bruce Bennett famous for other than, honestly, the only couple people that I know, pretty well is John Huston, the director, and Humphrey Bogart.
I didn't write too much for that, though.
Oh, he didn't come up with it too much. That's fine. I don't think there's a ton to know about him going forward in anything that we, if we see him show up in one of our science fiction movies, I'll eat my hat because I don't know if I believe that.
Actually, you guys briefly talked about Bruce Bennett in your Tarzan of the Apes episode. His name before he changed it to Bruce Bennett was Herman Brix and played Tarzan in the serial The New Adventures of Tarzan.
Okay, I think that the guy who played Curtin, who was the other guy in this movie, he was like one of those other character actors that we've talked about, just kind of good, but they end up in a bunch of Westerns. I wonder if I think that guy, he ended up in a bunch of Westerns during the 50s.
Tim Holt,
that's right.
That was Tim Holt.
Yeah, and I'm wondering if he's in a lot of other Western stuff. Don't quote me on that, but I think that's true.
Yes, he would be in a ton of Western stuff. We'll talk about that later. So, again, it was filmed in Durango and Tampico, which is Mexico. There's a strange thing where the local government inexplicably shut the production down, and they're like, but why? Just why? We didn't do anything wrong.
Did they give a reason?
Apparently it was the local newspaper. They printed a false story accusing the film of being, not very flattering to Mexico. So they're just like, hey, we're just gonna pay the newspaper to poke at the movie, and then the local government shut it down.
Okay, think about it. Flattering to Mexico, I don't know, but it's not very flattering to the Mexican people. But again, what movies made during this time really were? I mean, all you see is the people in the village, and they're fine. They don't say much, but they're perfectly fine. The people from the village, and then there's the people in like the main city, and they're okay. I mean, they kind of show that the federales, will make you dig your own grave, and then they'll shoot you and you fall in the grave. It's the bandits that kind of seem kind of stereotypical, because they're like, okay, what are you doing? It's kind of like that, and you saw that all the time.
Yes, he did. But Walter Houston, at some of these points in the movie, he had to speak fluent Spanish, which he couldn't really do, because he didn't really know it. So John Huston had hired a Mexican to record the lines. Walter, he goes and memorizes the lines as he says them, and the way he says them, so perfectly that many thought he knew the language, because he's just like, he memorized it to a T. Bogart knew only 2 Spanish words, as written here. Dos Equis, which is a Mexican beer. That's funny.
Dos Equis. Yeah, Dos Equis
yes.
is a kind of beer. You could say, más cervezas, por favor. You could say, more beer, please. That sounds like something Bogart would say, yeah.
Yeah, he just cares about women, smoking, and alcohol. That's just his character.
Maybe a little bit in real life, too.
Yeah. But during the shooting of this, there were some pranks being pulled by John Huston, and I think Humphrey Bogart came along, too. There was some with one of the Mexican actors, I think. What they did is they put glue on the saddle of the horse. They made him do a scene, and then he was trying to get out because he wanted to have his lunch break really badly. And he was just like, I need to get out, please help me. It wasn't very flattered for that moment, but
oh, nice.
I think there was another one they were having Walter or somebody, another lunch related thing where it's just like they gave him like the food of the gods to eat, just a bunch of food, just stuffing him in between short scenes. And that's sort of funny. It's just like, how much food can you go in your stomach? Which is hilarious.
Well, so what they were doing is they filmed themselves feeding, Walter Houston, who plays the old man. So a lot of those scenes are cut out, because I saw him eating, but I didn't see him eating that much.
Well, it was in the background.
Okay.
They had him do shots, and then come back to eat, and then do more shots, and then come back to eat a bunch of food.
Okay, this is something I do know a little bit about. Now, I'm not an expert, but I have seen some interviews or some articles about people that do commercials, right? When you have people that do commercials and they're eating like a burger, and they go, When they say cut, they spit it. They have a big bucket they spit it out into. That way they can do another shot, because if you eat the food, you're going to be full, and you're not going to want to eat for the 85th time they film it. But they make you spit it out, and you just eat it. You eat another bite again, and they do things to the food to make it look really good in the commercials. But that's what they do, is you don't really truly eat it when you're drinking or doing all that kind of stuff. You basically spit it out. But if they made him really eat that stuff, I would be like, I'm done. No more takes, please.
So there is an edited scene. It's sort of famous. Spoilers for the end.
Yeah.
Dobbs gets decapitated, and apparently this scene would have had Dobbs' head, roll onto the floor being shot.
They would have done that now. I think more violent scenes were probably a lot more prevalent with these kind of movies. I think post 1970s, but when they could allow more of that stuff on screen. But yeah, I heard about that. They edited.
But he did edit a duplicate of a previous scene over that shot to be more better for the censors, because they were taking a lot of the novel to be able to meet Hays Code. I mean, apparently the original line of badges, we don't need any badges, is badges to bleep with badges. We have no badges. In fact, we don't need badges. I don't have to show you any badges. And then a bunch of cuss words. So that makes sense to make it a bit more of a sillier line.
There's a lot more cursing in the book and in the script.
Yes.
That's what it seems like, yeah.
And they're not really great words.
Yeah, and honestly, I think it, for what it is, I'm kind of glad that the movie
I'm
movie
glad
is
they
what it
changed
is.
the line to be a lot less clouded by, profanity, to be, the one we know, badges.
We ain't got no badges. We don't need no badges.
I don't have to show you any stinking
badges. Right. And everybody always quotes it, badges. We don't need no stinking badges. And I've done that before too, so I'm just as
Yeah,
bad.
but who knows? Number 36 on the American Film Institute list of top 100 movie quotes. So
I think people get that quote wrong, just like people get, Luke, I'm your father. That's not exactly how it goes. Or
yeah, it's like, no, I am your father.
Or beam me up, Scotty, which I don't think.
But we get the point of it. You don't have to say it exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, if you were to say, no, I am your father, what would you think that was from? But if you say, Luke, I am your father, then you go, oh, Luke.
Right, exactly.
Luke is a character, so it's Luke Skywalker. But anyway, the movie is about, the corrupting influence of greed, and I think that is put to a lot of great effect here. Roger Ebert says the movie's never been about gold, but about character, and I agree.
Yeah.
It is about a lot of great characters and a lot of great character moments. Walter, sort of, higgity jig that he does, sort of like a Stinky Pete sort of character,
yes,
from Toy Story 2.
I can see that. Yeah, whenever you're saying
I feel like he is sort of making a reference to Walter
Houston, right?
As Howard.
Yeah. Also, probably Gabby Hayes. There's also a character actor back in the days when they did little westerns, like Roy Rogers westerns. Gabby Hayes was kind of the whole Walter Houston style performance. He was kind of a comedy guy, and he was in a lot of those westerns. Kids would go see a Gabby Hayes movie on the weekend,
Yeah, another thing, the score. It's a very great score. There's a great theme, as we were talking about, da 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 da.
We almost just need to play it right here.
But it's a great theme. It's Max Steiner's work from King Kong and Citizen Kane.
That's right. Max Steiner.
He did very great with the score. There's especially a great moment where, Curtin is needing to rescue Dobbs from a mine, and he hesitates a little bit.
Yeah.
But then the theme starts appearing. The theme just comes in, and then he turns right around and he rescues his dude. It's so heroic.
In a way, and I'll get into this when I talk about my theories on this movie, there's a core of goodness in Curtin. There's a selflessness and a selfishness in this movie, and I think Curtin, when you see that he started to walk away, he went, no, that's not who I am, and he went back in.
Bogart was the worst, probably, of all of the greed. Sort of Tim Holt falling in behind, but Howard really does seem to be, the angel of the moment, because he's experienced, and so he doesn't really give in to that greed at all. In fact, he goes over in the movie to help a Mexican little tribe when they have trouble with their child. So he's very, very, on the greater end of the morality. The gooder end of the morality.
Yeah, the goodness. I think he represents contentment, and he represents wisdom, because he's getting old. It's not like he has too many years left of his life, but he's like, you know what?
He's just this old prospector. He's very experienced.
He is the experience of wisdom, because there's a part where he says, they're like, what would you want to do? And he's like, I don't know, get just enough to live on and just read, comic strips and stuff. Just chill out, chillax. Because he's probably had a rough life. He's learned a lot of stuff,
And he's gone out for gold multiple times.
Yeah.
So there probably is gold. There's gold all over the U.S. Or rather Mexico. So
California
some
too.
Gold to go for. California, the Sonoran Desert, stuff like that.
It's not like, if something bad happens and all this hard work that he's done comes to nothing, he just kind of has to laugh about it, because what are you going to do? It's some people would get mad and just, throw a fit, but he's just like, take a lesson from Walter, honestly. Anybody who watches this movie, just Walter's my spirit animal in this movie, so just be like him.
He is such a spirit animal. His higgity-jig dance, his laughter, he is sort of a younger person in an old shell sort of idea.
Yes, and he's the best.
But it is ultimately a bunch of stinky men in a desert.
They're all stinky.
That's sort of the vibe.
And they're caked with dirt, especially Humphrey Bogart. Okay, if you want to see, at the very beginning of the movie, after he gets a little bit, I think he gets a coin or a peso or whatever from John Huston acting in the movie, which that happens a lot with some directors. But anyway, he goes and he gets a nice clean shave, powdered. You get the talcum powder on your face. You get the slick back hair, with the Dapper Dan or whatever that stuff. I always call it Dapper Dan. Strangely enough, it's a real echo, because you look at that and then you look at him toward the end of the movie. He's just caked in like this brown dirt and his hair is all disheveled, and you're like, yep, that's where you go.
Yeah, it's also good to mention a Mexican boy named Pablo. John Huston ended up adopting this dude because he's an orphan that he brought from the streets, and that's sort of adorable. He raised him with his wife, his second wife, Evelyn Keyes. He did eventually go back to Mexico and become a car salesman, but yeah, he had a good life, and it's very wholesome because, he brought him from the street and he ended up adopting him at the end of the movie. Speaking of the end of the movie,
yeah.
The film, it earned $2.3 million in the U.S. in 1948, according to Warner Bros. Records. It earned $2,746,000 domestically, and 1,349,000 foreign countries, which is pretty interesting. Foreign countries, it still did pretty good.
It was pretty good, but it didn't do amazing. I think what helped the movie out was maybe the re-releases. That happened a lot with movies back then. Like if you had, like with Citizen Kane, when they re-released it back again, I think in the 50s, it did better, right?
It got the recognition it didn't get.
Yeah.
At the time.
Yeah.
Definitely. There's a lot of good movies and TV series and stuff that don't get the recognition for when they are now. Like Avatar: The Last Airbender, man. That didn't get very much recognition until it was in its reruns before everyone was going like, oh, this is actually really great.
You're talking about the animated series.
Yes.
Okay.
Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Not the movie. Oh, my word.
Not the movie.
Oh, my word.
The James Cameron movie.
No.
Did very well during launch.
No, I'm talking about the Avatar: The Last Airbender movie from M. Night Shyamalan.
Oh, that one.
I don't know if
you want to cover that for the podcast.
We could. I think it may be on the list. We'll have to see, but we could watch that, and we could maybe have your sister Leia, who we did the Phantom of the Opera episode on.
All those men lifting one rock.
Yes,
man, that's a bad movie.
I know. So that's a future thought. Let's put a pin in that and
put in the pin in that. But there were some Oscars handed out. Best Supporting Actor for Walter Huston.
Of course,
he deserved it.
The nominees for the best performance by an actor in a supporting role are Walter Huston in Treasure of Sierra Madre, Warner Brothers, and the winner is Walter Huston.
Bob said you can't take any credits. I'd like to take a credit myself. Many years ago, I raised a son, and I said, if you ever become a director or a writer, please find a good part for your old man. He did all right.
Best Director, Best Writing, and Best Screenplay for John Huston. Yep. He did a lot of good writing and screenplay for this movie. That's pretty great. Those were his only Oscars, apparently. There was some controversy since the 1949 ceremony because the Academy's choice not to nominate Bogart for the Academy Award for Best Actor for this movie. Choice that modern critics and Academy members have since condemned. Interesting. Bogart's performance has been named the best of his career. Mm-hmm. British actor Daniel Day-Lewis said that it'll be his second Oscar-winning performance as Vicious Oil Barrel Dan Plainview in There'll Be Blood. And that was very heavily inspired by Bogart's portrayal of Fred C. Dobbs in this movie. So There Will Be Blood, I think, is a movie, it's almost like this, except they're searching for oil. A lot of, humanity, exploration, humanity and greed. Humans might be great things on the outside, but in the inside,
Yeah, I've seen There Will Be Blood twice, and I actually did for a play that I was in, I actually did the the I drink your milkshake speech.
But from watching it, I guess it's probably very clear there was blood.
Yes, well,
most likely. I mean, if the title said there will be blood, and there wasn't blood, then you'd be severely disappointed.
Well, also, the oil is also called the black blood of the earth, so there's a double meaning to that. Also, blood meaning relatives, but that's a whole nother story. But the thing is, also Daniel Day-Lewis playing Daniel Plainview. His voice is actually kind of like John Huston's voice, who's the director. I can't do a good imitation of it, but if you listen to John Huston and listen to Daniel Plainview, they sound very similar. So he may be, there may be some connections there. But anyway.
Let's get into the people. So first we have John Huston. He's a pretty great guy. He did the Maltese Falcon as well. Obviously, we talked about that. He did the Asphalt Jungle, the Misfits, Man Who Would Be King, Fat City. Man, It's a Fat City, I guess.
The Man Who Would Be King has got Michael Caine, who played Alfred in the Nolan Batman movies. Also has Sean Connery in it too.
And again, he did do a lot of things with his father, very wholesome, and also his daughter Angelica, which also has something to say about Walter, as we'll play in this clip.
I think in terms of performance, it's one of the greatest performances of all time from Walter Huston. It's funny, it's sharp, it's witty. The idea that this old-timer, and Tim Holt and Humphrey Bogart talk about this at the beginning of the film, in their relative characters. They discuss the old man as, being half spent and not really being a great bet to go up into the Sierras with. And of course, he outwits them, he outwalks them, he's really a fantastically energetic character, and I think he propels the movie. His energy is really the central theme of that movie.
They got Oscars.
She got Oscar for Prizzi's Honor, I think. Angelica also played Morticia in the Addams Family live-action movies.
Cool.
Yeah.
He used to be a painter, and then he moves to Mexico and begins writing some plays and short stories, and then he moves to Los Angeles to be a screenwriter, because after all, if you're going to be for Hollywood, you have to move to Los Angeles. I mean, nowadays you could just probably do it over Zoom. Most likely, but
you could do it anywhere.
One way or the other, you're ending up in LA if you're working in Hollywood.
Honestly, between you and me, I think don't shoot the messenger, but I think Hollywood is very played out in terms of Los Angeles because it's so saturated. There's an old joke that that if you go to a restaurant, you're pretty much going to find waiters who they all have written their own scripts and they want to get those out there. So everybody in Hollywood wants to do something with movies, and you don't have to make movies in Hollywood to make movies in Hollywood, because you can film them anywhere, you can develop them anywhere. I mean, like Robert Rodriguez, he did the Spy Kids movies and Desperado and all those different things. He could do stuff in Mexico, or he did stuff in Austin, Texas. So you film wherever you want to, and you just distribute it wherever you want to. So, Hollywood may be like a mecca for a lot of movie people, but honestly, the way that technology is now, you can do it anywhere and you can move it around digitally. The Hollywood system and being so connected to Hollywood and Los Angeles, there's a lot different now than it was.
Yeah. So, living in Los Angeles, Huston became infatuated with the new film industry and all the motion pictures. He was a spectator, though, for that moment. Apparently, to Huston, Charlie Chaplin was God to him. So that's sort of funny. Charlie Chaplin, doing his stuff. So he returned to New York City to live with his father, who was acting in off-Broadway productions. So he was...
Walter?
Yes, Walter. And he had a few small roles. He later remembered that while watching his father rehearse, he became fascinated with the mechanics of acting. He says, what I learned there during those weeks of rehearsal would serve me for the rest of my life, which is interesting. He had a pretty wholesome relationship with his father, I guess. So he decided that writing would be a viable career. He focused on it. He did some stuff in New York. He moved back to Los Angeles so that he could write for Hollywood, because, the silent era went to talkies by then, and they were really wanting some writers to populate the world with some talkies. His father did move there earlier and gain success with some films already, so he was like, you know what, I'm gonna go there too. So he got a job in the script department, Universal, began writing dialogue for Murders in the Rue Morgue.
Yeah, that's right, I remember that.
Which, yeah, there are connections to our previous works. Murders in the Rue Morgue is a pretty good episode.
That's from season 1, go check it out, it's a good episode.
Here's a clip about John Huston.
He was a writer first. He grew up in a dramatic family. His mother crossed the Mississippi on horseback. I think his grandfather gambled and won a western city and then lost it at the table.
I don't know that there are any stories about John Huston that are exaggerated. He really was a world-class character and his own man. Maybe not the nicest man at all times, maybe not the best husband or the best father, but when it came to writing and directing, he was good.
But he did, during this time, get into a little trouble driving drunk. This gets him in trouble in 1933 when he was driving drunk with his girlfriend, Zita Johann, who we mentioned in our Mummy episode.
A Knocks in the Moon, Helen Grosvenor?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Zita Johann.
And there was a time where he was driving with her, he hit a parked car, and he sent her flying through the windshield.
Oh, my God.
Oof. She suffered head trauma, definitely. She also killed actress Tosca Rolin, drunk driving as well, so there was some issue with that. Apparently there was a rumor that Clark Gable was responsible for that, and Huston was paid to take the blame. Wasn't Clark Gable something to do with Invisible Man?
No. Clark Gable was a famous kind of leading man, romantic leading man kind of character. He was in Gone with the Wind, famously. That's his most famous role, was in Gone with the Wind.
But it was filming a movie over on location, so he couldn't really too much be responsible. So he did get past this, but it left him traumatized by this incident. By 1937, he did bounce back. He was respected as a screenwriter again. He took part in World War II, did stuff with that. He also performed an uncredited rewrite for the screenplay of The Stranger 1946, film he would have directed if not for Orson Welles.
Wait, Orson Welles directed The Stranger?
Yes.
Okay.
That's interesting. He's cropping up a couple times. In the 60s, he would surprisingly blossom as an actor in The Cardinal, 1964, and he virtually stole the picture, which is interesting. He was nominated an Oscar for Best Supporting Actor for it after all. So, he's just like, I do my best as an actor.
I don't remember a lot of his roles, but I do remember he played Abraham in the Bible, the movie, right? It was like the movie called The Bible, and he played Abraham. Did he also direct that too?
Apparently he was also in Casino Royale as an actor and director, the 1967 version.
Oh, yeah.
He was also in Battle for the Planet of the Apes, which we are probably
covering later, yes.
Huston is also the voice of Gandalf in the Rankin Bass animated versions of The Hobbit and Return of the King, which is pretty cool, but I wonder who was the actor he did, Two Towers, though.
Oh, actually, they did not do the Two Towers. They did The Hobbit and the Return of the King, and they did not do Fellowship of the Ring of Two Towers. I know it's weird, but Rankin Bass, I think, only had the wherewithal to do the third one, which is very strange.
But Huston, as you said, was also in The Other Side of the Wind, which was his unfinished, one of Orson Welles' last projects. He didn't finish this one. He didn't overall regard his acting as anything as serious or remarkable in this time. But do understand this is the 80s, so this is, he did some directing and then he went to acting and stuff. But his films were very insightful about human nature and human struggles. That's very interesting. According to Kaminsky, human stories were often about failed quests by a group of different people. The group would persist in the face of poor odds, doomed to the outset by the circumstances created by an impossible situation.
That sounds like Treasure of Sierra Madre.
That sure sounds like the heart of this movie. It says, however, some members of the doomed group usually survive, those who are cool and intelligent, or someone who sacrificed everything for self-understanding and independence. That does kind of get, it notes that that's also sort of personified in Bogart in The Maltese Falcon.
What have you ever given me beside money? Have you ever given me any of your confidence, any of the truth? Haven't you tried to buy my loyalty with money and nothing else?
What else is there I can buy you with?
We were talking about a lot more money than this.
There are more of us to be taken care of now.
Well, that may be, but I've got the Falcon.
You may have the Falcon, but we certainly have you.
I've taken a little riding from you I'm gonna take. Get up and shoot it out.
This means, not cool as in I'm a cool guy, but cool under pressure. Who can keep their head. If you can keep your head up and your wits about you, which Bogart's character, Fred C. Dobbs, does not keep his cool. He thinks he kills somebody, and he's starting to talk to himself, like Walter says.
He gets slowly unhinged.
That's where the problem starts, when you start talking to yourself.
But film historian James Goodwin adds that in virtually all of his films that there is some type of heroic quest, even if it involves some questionable motives or destructive alliances. That also fits this movie.
Yeah.
He also says, in addition, the quest is preferable to the spiritless, immoral routines of life. As a result, his best films, according to Flint, have lean, fast-paced scripts with vibrant plots and characterizations, and many of them deal, ironically, with vanity, avarice, and unfulfilled quests. That does describe a lot of this movie.
This is avarice.
This is the heart of, him as a person, and he writes a lot about this stuff, and he's very good at it. That's why I got, best writer, best screenwriter Oscars,
Yeah, and honestly, I would say that, we talked about this type of director, the auteur. It's the director that not only has a hand in the direction, but also has a hand maybe with the actors, that also has a hand maybe in also the effects and the production, who can put their definitive stamp on the project. Guys like Scorsese and Spielberg and Orson Welles and also John Huston, they're auteurs. They're not just a guy who came in and said cut and action and put this thing there and that's it. Guys that just came...
He had a heart to what he did. Another quote here is, what fundamentally fascinated Huston was not movies per se, that is form, but the human condition, and literature offered a roadmap for exploring that condition. I definitely agree, especially with the Sierra Madre and maybe the Maltese Falcon and that stuff. It sort of... explores the human condition. According to Roger Ebert, his fascination with underdogs and losers is a good one. The characters in Huston movies hardly ever set out to achieve what they're aiming for. They don't really get what they're aiming for. Sam Spade in The Maltese Falcon, Huston's first film, ends up minus one partner and one woman thought he could trust. Also, everyone is a loser in The Treasure of the Sierra Madre, and the gold blows back into the dust and is lost in it. Very good quote. He was friends with Humphrey Bogart. He was diagnosed with emphysema in 1978. The last year of his life, he couldn't breathe for more than 20 minutes without oxygen, and he died in 1987 in his little rented home in Rhode Island from pneumonia as a complication of lung disease, aged 81. He's interred in the Hollywood Forever Cemetery in Hollywood with his mother, which is very interesting. So he died a death of not being able to breathe. Very good.
Yeah, and it makes all the scenes where he's smoking kind of like, oh man, you're like, if you know that's how he died, you're like, man, don't be rolling. He rolls a lot of cigarettes in this movie and smokes a lot of tobacco, but a lot of the guys in this movie do. It just seems like that was his bag.
So next we get to Humphreus Bogarty. And that is not his actual name, though. That would be funny. Humphreus Bogarty.
No. Yeah, he's called Bogey as a nickname. A lot of people are saying Bogey.
Bogart's such a big star, such an icon to us now. We forget that he spent so many years coming up through the ranks, playing small parts.
Bogart had started off in the theater just as a stage manager. And so he learned a lot about his craft. And what was interesting about him in his earlier time on Broadway is that he always played the male ingenue. He was the attractive guy. And one of the critics from Chicago said that he was as handsome as Valentino. And you think of Bogart as this as this really tough guy, and it's hard to imagine that he had about a 9-year stage career in which he was this young, attractive player.
But we also have to remember that there was nothing about him, particularly his physical look, that would conjure up the idea of a star at that era. Stars in those days were like Clark Gable and Tyrone Power and Robert Taylor. They looked like movie stars. And here Bogart looked like this street guy.
He is an icon in American culture, especially in, I think there's some Bugs Bunny shorts where, again, he's like, hey, can I steak an American for a meal?
Now he's built a boat on which they both can live. He hoped that fickle fate have nothing up her sleeve.
Say, pardon me, but could you help out a fellow American who's down on his luck?
Hit the road!
Which is one of his famous lines as well. He was in Casablanca, the Maltese Falcon, I think.
Sweetheart.
He was in a lot of great stuff. Casablanca is said to have one of the finest scripts in film history, so it's got good scripting.
If that plane leaves the ground and you're not with him, you'll regret it. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but soon and for the rest of your life.
But what about us?
We'll always have Paris. We didn't have. We lost it until you came to Casablanca. Ilsa, I'm no good at being noble, but it doesn't take much to see that the problems of 3 little people don't amount to a hill of beans in this crazy world. Someday you'll understand that. Now. He's looking at you, kid.
Very memorable. It's got some great classic sequences, like some of these scenes,
And that's something that can, build the blueprints for something like The Treasure of the Sierra Madre, There's great people, great editing, there's a great score by Max Steiner, King Kong fame, lots of great scenes as well, and the humanity in there. That is a lot of the things that makes this movie very favored among a lot of people. So that is why it deserves to be, one of the greatest movies of all time, even, because there is a lot of great things.
Okay, wow, that's high praise. Well, I also would say there's a lot of movies where people have these schemes and they don't always go like they want them to go, and sometimes they're their own worst enemy, and you just watch the scheme fall apart, mainly due to human failings and selfishness or mistrust or whatever. There's a lot of movies out there that do this. There's the movies of the Coen brothers, or different modern movies that are out nowadays. They owe a lot to this kind of style of movie, like The Treasure of Sierra Madre. And honestly, if it's a rainy day, and you can't go out and outside and do anything fun, turn in a movie on like this and just sit back for 2 hours. You can't go wrong. You honestly can't. That's just it's one of those movies where you're like, yeah, I'll sit back and watch this, and it's good every time you see it. That's
Indeed.
That's what I would say on this one. Anything else you'd like to talk about?
We are still talking about Humphrey Bogart.
Oh!
He began acting in Broadway shows. He was doing stuff like Up the River, The Petrified Forest, Dead End. He was Hugh Martin in that one. He was in The Maltese Falcon, obviously, and High Sierra, which were the ones that sort of catapulted him in his career. He was in Casablanca. Year after that, he was in To Have and To Have Not. He was with Lauren Bacall, I think, in that one.
Yeah, he's been in quite a few movies with Lauren Bacall. I think they kind of paired them up together in a quite a handful of things,
Key Largo, In a Lonely Place. There's also Treasure of Sierra Madre, obviously this one. People liked him in Treasure of Sierra Madre and A Lonely Place. Those were among his best performances, though not when it was released. This is an after thing. They went, actually, he's a really great person in this. And I would agree for Treasure of the Sierra Madre, not having watched In a Lonely Place.
Yeah, and we'll have to, I'll help you track those down if you want to. But a lot of these movies, strangely enough, people don't appreciate them when they come out. And it takes later when people go back and look at these films and go, wow, that was really good. And sometimes they don't get the credit that they deserve. And whether it's due to with Citizen Kane because they tried to shut that movie down because of who it was talking about, or other movies that maybe, the people at the time just didn't appreciate it or just didn't catch at the right time. But, that's why I like watching a lot of these old movies with you in this podcast, is because a lot of these we're getting to see them again, get a new appreciation of those movies.
Yeah, so he was in The Barefoot Contessa, and then he died of cancer in 1957. Man, I wish cancer would die sometimes. Doesn't everyone know? So Lauren Bacall wrote in her autobiography that Bogart's birthday was always celebrated on Christmas Day. So it is confirmed that he was born on Christmas Day. So he was like, oh, well, I don't get a present every year because my birthday is on Christmas Day, and that's sort of funny. I wonder if there are definitely other people who probably are in the same predicament. They're born on Christmas Day. Sort of a Christmas miracle was the world given Humphrey Bogart, which is funny.
Nice.
So his mother used a drawing of him in a advertising campaign for Melon's Baby Food, and she did earn over $50,000 a year at the peak of her career in having him be the mascot for the baby food. And this was a big sum, considerably more than her husband's $20,000. So she was just like making buku bucks over her baby. That's funny.
Little baby baby Bogey was making money?
No, her mother was making money off of him. I find that funny.
Or his mother.
Yes, his mother.
Right.
His mother.
Well, but when they were getting the gold, he said, "Well, I'll be all right with 50,000 or some other, sum." And I was like, "Dude, you were getting that when you were a baby and didn't even have to work for it." So,
So he was in the war, the Second World War. He was trying to get in the Navy. He was rejected, but then he did get into some sort of Navy. There is a whole paragraph on Wikipedia about his lip scar, where on earth it came from. There's several conflicting stories. Was it hit by shrapnel on a ship that was shelled, but it wasn't actually shelled, though? There's the USS Leviathan. They were like, oh, well, that probably got shelled, and he got hit by shrapnel when the ship was shelled, but it wasn't ever shelled, though. So, and he wouldn't probably been at sea before the armistice.
It's probably got some easy answer, but go ahead. What are some other theories?
There's some other theories by longtime friend Nathaniel Benchley was that Bogart was injured while taking a prisoner to Portsmouth Naval Prison in Kittery, Maine. It says, while changing trains in Boston, the handcuffed prisoner reportedly asked Bogart for a cigarette. Bogart looked for a match. The prisoner smashed him across the mouth, cutting his lip, and fled before being recaptured and imprisoned. An alternate version, he was struck in the mouth by a handcuff loosened. The handcuff loosened while freeing his charge. The other handcuff was still around the prisoner's wrist. Interesting. So, by the time Bogart was treated by a doctor, a scar had formed. David Niven said that when he first asked Bogart about his scar, however, he said it was caused by a childhood accident. Bogart later told Niven, instead of stitching it up, he screwed it up. So he's just like, you know what, I had an accident, the doctor did that, that's probably how it happened.
Yeah, probably doesn't have that interesting...
But who knows, this is a lip scar. I mean, what does it do? It didn't impede his speech at all. It didn't give him too much of a lisp.
Well, it's not a lisp, but it does this thing where he sweetheart, he talks like this, He has a certain way of talking. If you watch him in some of his movies like Maltese Falcon and Casablanca, if you watch him, there's ways in which he talks and moves his teeth and everything that are a little bit different.
He was in Broadway. It says preferring to learn by doing. He never took acting lessons, which is so him. He was in at least 17 productions between 1922 and 1935. Apparently, he's reportedly the first actor to say tennis anyone on stage. What a fact. According to Alexander Woolcott, who's a person, Bogart is what is usually and mercifully described as inadequate, which is hilarious. He's just inadequate. Humphrey Bogart gives the most effective performance, both dry and fresh, if that be possible, as well. So he's inadequate, but another person was like, hey, he's actually pretty good. But Bogart didn't really like his time at this. He called him White Pants Willie rolls when he got them, which is hilarious.
White Pants Willie. Oh, wow.
But anyway, he did get a contract with Fox Film, and there he met Spencer Tracy, which we talked about in the Jekyll and Hyde stuff. We're probably going to be doing this stuff for the second season.
We're doing the 1940... No, it's going to be in 1941, I think.
1941. That's pretty cool. So he met Spencer Tracy. He liked him, admired him, and the two men became close friends. Tracy made his feature film debut in his only movie with Bogart, which was Up the River, in which their leading roles were as inmates, so they were big buddies. It says Tracy received top billing, but Bogart's picture appeared in the film posters, and he was billed fourth behind Tracy. Oh, they were gonna try and get into The Desperate Hours together. They both insisted upon top billing, however. Tracy dropped out and was replaced by Frederick March. We were talking about Frederick March in the Jekyll and Hyde episode. Pretty good episode.
He played Hyde, yeah. And what I was going to say is that Spencer Tracy was paired often with Katharine Hepburn.
Yeah, who knows? I think it was also, he did some stuff with James Cagney, which is a very famous gangster.
James Cagney, and guess what? He played Lon Chaney in The Man of a Thousand Faces. See, it all connects together. We're not even trying, and it's happening.
So despite his success in The Petrified Forest, which was an A movie, he signed the 26 contract, was typecast as a gangster in a series of B-movie crime dramas. He said although he was proud of his success, the fact that it derived from gangster roles weighed on him. He says, I can't get in a mild discussion without it turning into an argument. This be something to tone my voice or this arrogant face, something that antagonizes everyone. Nobody likes me on sight. I suppose that's why I'm cast as the heavy. Bogart used these years to begin developing his film persona, a wound, stoical, cynical, charming, vulnerable, self-mocking loner with a code of honor. A lot of adjectives, but he definitely had a sort of character in his gangster years. That's sort of funny saying that, gangster years.
Well, yeah, that was really gangster. Now, he also played the detective, Sam Spade, in The Maltese Falcon. Were there any other Sams?
Yes, he was. He was also in High Sierra as well. That's pretty cool. He did get his dog to play Pard in High Sierra, which is pretty cool.
So that's actually his dog?
Yes. It is.
Okay.
Anyway, we also get to a time, Frank McHugh, James Cagney, and Bogart being all buddies together in San Quentin, Racket Busters, You Can't Get Away with Murder, Dead End as well, sort of, on loan to Sam Goldwyn, which thing. He was a gangster modeled after Babyface Nelson. Funny.
Yes.
He was also in What Happened to the Corbett's. The protagonist replies, I've seen Humphrey Bogart with one often enough when he asks how to operate an automatic weapon, because he was playing so many violent roles. Interesting. He was in The Return of Dr. X. We did talk about that in The Mummy? Somewhere around there we talked about Dr. X.
No, it was the Vampire Bat?
Yes.
I think The Return of Dr. X had the actress that was in Vampire Bat in that. And I think also Lionel Atwill, I think, as well. And I think they filmed that, I think, around the same time that they were doing the Vampire Bat, because there was some time that they weren't doing anything.
Yeah, there was also some stuff with his marriage with Maya Method that wasn't really going well.
Was he the kind of guy that would cheat on his woman, or?
Who knows? They had some arguments and stuff, but I decided to not really go into it. But then, again, he was in, Maltese Falcon and Casablanca. He did some pretty good stuff there. Let's go on to Tim Holt as Bob Curtin. We have some short people here, so maybe we'll get this done pretty short. So, he was an American actor. February 5th, 1919 was his birth date. He was a popular Western star during the 40s and 50s. I mean, he's a Californian. Everyone knew he'd be a Western star. I mean, even his sister was sort of a star, too, for B-Westerns.
Right.
Which is sort of funny. You live in California. He's got he's got the swagger. He's gonna be a Western star.
Well, yeah, and that was really the thing. I mean, there were so many Westerns that were made during the 40s.
Also in
and
The
50s.
Magnificent Ambersons as well, which we talked about in Citizen Kane.
Yep, directed by Orson Welles.
So post-war he went to RoccoW. So during this time, we have a Tom Stemple that argues that while Holst has lost his baby fat during the war, he still had a wonderful grin and cute dimples, and he used the mixture of charm and seriousness very well, which is very something you could say about Curtin as a character.
Yes, I mean, when he has to get serious is in the Treasure of Sierra Madre. It's to defend his own decisions. He's not a pushover. I mean, he's like, I'm gonna do the right thing.
I mean, who knows? The Chicago Daily Tribune says that he was very likable in this movie, which I do sort of agree. He was sort of overshadowed by Bogart and Walter, who were, bigger people and a lot more liked. But he's very likable.
Yeah,
he gives
think so.
a rare and sincere impression of character in his performance, says Angelus Time. His career subsists of movies on the edge of B-Westerns, so expensive they could almost have been A-Westerns. 1948, Tim Holt became the series of comics books, and that's all I really have on him. I mean, he starred in a horror film, The Monster that Challenged the World, in 1957, so but he just did westerns overall.
Yeah, I don't know if we're doing the monster who challenged the world or not.
I don't know. Then we get to Walter Houston. Very great character. He's a Canadian,
Right.
As we said, he got the Best Supporting Actor Oscar for this movie. He did get an uncredited appearance in The Maltese Falcon. After all, him and his son pulled him into a lot of movies during his career. That's interesting. So, he is shot just before delivering a black bird to Sam Spade, played by Humphrey Bogart. So we do get some Humphrey Bogart, Walter Houston, John Huston action in The Maltese Falcon before we get to this movie, which is interesting. So as a practical joke during filming, John had him enter the scene and die for more than 10 different takes, which is hilarious. Houston, he also appears in an uncredited role as a military instruction in a safeguarding military information short that his son did, John Huston did. It's interesting. The film was produced by the Academy of Motion Pictures Arts and Sciences and distributed by the War Activities Committee of the Motion Industry. He was a narrator in the Why We Fight series of World War II documentaries, directed by Frank Capra.
He did It's a Wonderful
I
Life.
thought I recognized that name somewhere. So he was in The Devil and Daniel Webster, which is sort of an interesting title, I guess. The Devil and Daniel Webster. What is the encyclopedia guy doing with the devil?
No, I think it has something to do with a trial where somebody gets on trial for their soul or something. So it's got the devil in there, of course, in Daniel Webster.
His last film, after The Treasure of Sierra Madre, is The Furies, 1950, in which he co-stars with Barbara Stanwyck and Wendell Corey. And that Western, Houston's final line is, "There will never be another one like me." He died before The Furies released. That is a great line to go out on.
That is true. That is true.
There will never be another one like
Walter
me.
Houston. The closest thing to Walter Houston is probably his son, but I'd still.
Probably.
They're different guys.
His higgity jig dance, his personality, the way he talks, it's very iconic. You know, the Stinky Pete inspiration. Stinky Pete gets a lot of inspiration from that. I mean, he doesn't really do a higgity jiggity dance. He's actually a villain, spoiler alert. So, but he does, take a lot of that accent and sort of the idea of a Western guy, and he puts that in there. So, that was the production of The Treasure of the Sierra Madre, and I hope that we will enjoy the plot of that, because it's got a lot of, threads of underlying, greed and mistrust. Who can you trust when things get dire? And will someone truly save you from someone else's desires when the time comes and you're in need? Who will save you?
Selfishness and selflessness, are at war. We're at war with the angels and demons of our nature, our better nature and our nature that seeks to drag us down to.
And we'll be exploring that with Dad in the next section, so be prepared.
That's me. Yeah. All right. Yeah, I'm gonna go over the plot and kind of the ways in which this story evolves. So right after the break, come back with us as we step into, for a moment, Tampico.
Step in time.
Step in time.
Right, I don't remember exactly how that goes, except for Step in Time.
Would you stake an American for a meal of a wonderful movie?
You've already asked me 5 times already. Don't you remember?
Oh, right, I forgot. But you're going to give me a peso anyway, right? So go ahead.
Ding! And then it hits your eyeball.
And then it hits my eyeball. All right, so we're going to go and talk about the plot of this film. See you when we come back from break.
Welcome to another podcast where it has been a little bit of a break for me and for Dad between episode recordings, but it'll still be the same goodness you've always had. Joined with me as always is my dad. We're going to talk about the topic of The Treasure of the Sierra Madre's plot. We're going to journey through the outbacks.
Well, it's
the mountains, but still.
Yeah, the outback is in Australia.
The Sonoran Desert. Though that's probably still too high.
Is it?
You said, I think it's in California, right? No, where
Yeah.
are they? I don't know.
They're in Mexico.
All right, so here's the deal. It's been a little bit of time.
And as such, we have seen the first bonus episode come out, M, and we really enjoyed making that one, and we're excited to release it to the world. In the meantime, we do have...
By the time this episode comes out, Citizen Kane will already be out.
And that one is pretty amazing. We get to cover the greatest movie of all time. But now we're talking about another great movie, indeed.
I really think it's great. A lot of people consider this one of their favorite movies. And honestly, a favorite movie to me is better than all the greatest movies. I'll explain why. Some days you're just like, like it's raining out, you want to watch something, and you pull something up and watch it, and you feel pulled in, and you feel better. And then you kind of go, is this the greatest film of all time? Well, it feels that way to me. That's what I think is, saying a movie is the greatest of all time, it's intimidating.
There's a subjective level, and then there's an objective level.
That's
which
true.
is very hard. You can often read into it very objectively. The cinematography, the music, animation, if there is any animation, I guess. We don't really talk about animated films too much, but the point stands that there's an objective way to review things, where it's like, here are all the good things that this movie accomplished and had, the way it presented itself, the way the director had his vision put out, the way the music sweeps you off your feet, I guess. And then there's the subjective level, which is all the rest of that. I really like this because all these subjective things, which I can't really name off the top of my head because they'd be subjective.
I think the listeners know that by us talking about this movie, at least in the first half, we like this movie a lot. And when I mentioned to other people who've seen the movie, I mentioned to a fellow podcaster, Matt Essery. Check out his podcast. It's a Video Culture. Check him out. Anyway, he says, I said we were doing Treasure of the Sierra Madre. And he goes, yeah, that's a really good one. It's one of my favorites.
It is a very solid one. It has a solid character in Walter Houston.
Walter Houston's got his own kind of... He's a character himself, I think.
He's a character himself, but he is a very well-done character.
You're saying the actor's name like God made him, which that's true.
Yeah, there's a quadrinity. So it's Jesus, God, the Holy Spirit, and Walter Houston.
The thing that I liked about this movie is it's just got a total package. It's got a theme that it wants you to explore, multifaceted characters, and just kind of lead you through their journey.
And another thing is it doesn't tell it in a stereotypical fashion as well. This isn't any sort of Western, because there's no rootin', there's no tootin'. It's just, guys
there's
out
some shooting
in the desert. There is some shooting. There's no, saloon bars you walk through. Really.
There is a bar.
There's a bar, but there's no saloon door to walk through. And there is no high noon, really.
There are burros. They're not horses, but there are burros.
And there's some donkeys, if you like them. They're very adorable, very lovable.
They're fantastic. I think that the stereotypes of Westerns cause people to make lists, like you're doing, of, what's in it, and what's in a Western and what's not. I wouldn't call this a Western. I would call this adventure, drama.
Yeah, if you're looking for the good, the bad, and the ugly style movie, if you're looking for Once Upon a Time in the West, I guess.
Yes.
That one is very stereotypical. If you're looking for Blazing Saddles, although that one's not too conventional.
That's a comedy, and there's parts of that movie that kind of veer off into silliness.
That's not really a conventional Western too much. But this especially decides to focus on a different aspect of Westerns.
Yeah, and honestly, the darkness that's in all of us, and you turn on each other, and yeah, we'll get into that.
We'll get into that. So, of course, the movie does begin with Humphrey Bogart as Fred C. Dobbs. He is going around, he's saying, "Say, will you stake a fellow American to a meal?" He's trying to get some money.
He does ask a few people. He's a bum.
Indeed, he is very poor. He doesn't have too much to his name. He's in need of better things, but at the very beginning, he's just all about money. Well, and a meal, technically, but...
Yeah, he does get a little bit of money, a peso or whatever, how many ever pesos, from a man in white. And this man in white is played by the director, John Huston.
Interesting.
That's him.
He was just like, no actor could portray this role better than I.
A lot of directors, famous directors, did put themselves in movies.
We talked about that in King Kong, though. At the end, they're shooting down King Kong. The pilots are the director and producer.
Well, Alfred Hitchcock was famous for doing it, and then...
He put himself in his own trailers.
He did.
You see the Psycho trailer? He was just presenting it where it's like, this is the room where it happened.
This is the room where he killed, the shower where he was... you're spoiling it. It's Alfred, you're spoiling it. It's a suspense movie, and you're spoiling it. Another director who's had some good hits and some pretty awful misses is M. Night Shyamalan. He actually has put himself in a couple of his movies, and I know that it was kind of a tip of the hat to Hitchcock, but it kind of for some people it rang hollow and felt like, oh, you think you're so great. Some people it rubbed them the wrong way.
Yeah, but the point of this scene was he asks him, hey, will you take a fellow American to a meal? He does in fact give him a coin. But as we'll see over this scene, this does occur a couple other times with the same man.
He gives him enough to kind of, to the next, cigarettes, coffee, a little bit something to eat. And then what do you do? You're going to have to beg again.
And then that's where a little Mexican boy, we were talking about him getting, he was an orphan and he got adopted by John Huston at the end of the movie. He comes up and he's like, hey, I'm selling this lottery ticket. It's the winning lottery ticket.
Look, senor, add the figures up. You get 13. What better number could you buy? It's a sure winner.
But Hobbs is just like, buzz off, man.
I'm not sure if this was the little boy that got... Is it Robert Blake?
Refer to my previous statements in the production for more information. And online. We are fallible.
Yeah, that's right. If it's the same Robert Blake, I know something that you may not have heard about him. He grew up, and he actually was in a cop show when he was an adult. And later, he got into a situation where some hitmen but they weren't real hitmen, they were fake hitmen. He asked them to kill his then wife. So then he went to jail for that.
Well, I recall him saying that he grew up and became a used car salesman, according to Wikipedia. So he may be talking about different people. Regardless, he says buzz off, exits, and he went to the park.
Well, he calls him a little beggar, which is funny because he's a big beggar, right?
Yeah.
4,000 pesos, the big price.
Get away from me, you little beggar.
Do you think it's a throwaway thing? That's fine, but it comes back later. He goes and he meets Curtin, played by Tim Holt. Curtin is also kind of scraggly looking, just like Fred Dobbsy. And they are laying down on benches because I guess it's the only place you can really lay down. There are actually some cities that actually have their benches, and they put little bumps or points at certain parts of the so that people that don't have a home, can't sleep there. They talk about if they were to sell lemonade or shine shoes, other white travelers or gringos would look down on them. But also, the indigenous people that live in Mexico would look down on them too, because they're taking away their livelihood. So it's some town to be broken, he says.
And then here also was the second occurrence of the man in white. He again says, hey, can I take you to a meal? And he's like, you already asked me that, but I'm going to give it to you anyway.
He walks away. That's where he gets his, he goes to the barbershop, gets all slicked back and looking nice and powdered up and everything. He's not scraggly anymore.
But it does say something about his character, though. The previous thing where it's like, oh, I didn't look at your face. I just looked at your hand and the peso.
Well, also because he feels humiliated by having to ask for money.
I saw it also as a statement of his character that he doesn't care about nothing but the money. But there's lots of perspectives on that.
Yeah, that's also, I like that too. That works.
So, yeah, barbershop, shave. He gets a shave with the peso.
He comes out and he follows behind, a good-looking lady, Spanish lady, and I'm like, okay, now that you don't look like all nice-looking, you think that you're going to be able to get her, and she walks away, and he basically loses his shot. That's where he meets the white-suited...
For the third time, and then that's where he goes, hey, you've already asked me twice. I'll just give you 2 pesos so that you remember not to ask me this time. 3 strikes, you're out.
Such impudence never came my way. Early this afternoon, I gave you money. While I was having my shoes polished, I gave you more money. Now you put the bite on me again. Do me a favor, will you? Go occasionally to somebody else. It's beginning to get tiresome.
Oh, excuse me, mister. I never knowed it was you. I never looked at your face. I just looked at your hands and the money you gave me.
This is the very last you get from me. Just to make sure you don't forget your promise, here's another peso.
The funny thing is about this is I've heard that he says
you have to make your way through life without my assistance,
which is kind of a joke because John Huston directed Humphrey Bogart in Maltese Falcon in 41, Across the Pacific in 42, Key Largo in 48. He also wrote the screenplay for High Sierra in 41, which Bogart was in.
So basically, they were dependent on each other for all most of their success. Probably Casablanca wasn't with anything related to him, though.
No, but there's quite a few movies that John Huston and Humphrey Bogart did together. So it was kind of a joke that, hey, you're going to have to, do some stuff without being connected to me.
But this is where the two of them also meet this other dude who is giving out jobs. He asks him, hey, can you take a fellow American to a meal? And he's like, I'll do you better. I'll give you a job.
$8 a day, American.
$8 American a day.
$8 American a day.
The both of them are like, ooh, an actual job.
Oh, wait. It's not the both of them because it's just Dobbsy. He meets Curtin after he gets there. He gets there and he sees Curtin and gives him a nod. So Curtin's not there.
Curtin's not there at the proposal, but he's there at the job.
He is. You're right. So it's a construction job, like an oil rig kind of thing.
They're building an oil rig, right?
It is a super sweaty job. It's back-breaking work. It's 130 in the shade, and there ain't any shade up there on the derrick. That's what they say. So
130 in the shade, and there ain't any shade up there on that derrick. Well, just figure you're a couple of millionaires in your own private steam van.
The pay is this is the part that's interesting.
The pay is delayed.
It is.
It doesn't come on the day. He waits till payday to come, which, as we'll see, doesn't ever come.
Well, they're promised a bonus if they finish within 2 weeks, right?
Right. So he's like, I won't pay you yet because I'm giving you a bonus in 2 weeks with this grueling job that, wasn't there like a ship related?
Yeah, well, they were on a ferry, and they get off the ferry back in Tampico, which is where the story began. The guy, his name is Pat McCormick, he goes, I gotta go back to the office and pick up the payroll. He goes, here's 10 pesos. I promise to meet you guys an hour later at the cantina. And he's not there. It's about 7 o'clock, and the guys have been drinking almost all their money away because they're just waiting. What else are you going to do?
They thought they were going to get their money, so they're like, we'll just spend it because we're going to get our money after all, so it won't matter. But it did matter. So that's where they're like, bro, he done messed up. We worked very hard, all for nothing. Let's go beat him up.
Well, they figured that out because there's another customer there. And he says, oh, Pat McCormick, huh? Well...
Yeah, that dude, he's not trustworthy at all. He will scam you out of your money.
He takes money mainly from foreigners and half-baked Americans.
Who are you calling a half-baked American?
Yeah, right. Me. Now, this is the first time that they realize that once money is involved, you can't trust anybody. Which, that comes into play a lot. They kind of figure out, okay, how much money do we have in between us? Do we have enough money for like a... like I said, a flop house. It's infested with roaches and stuff. So they go there. It's called the
El Oso Negro.
Negro, which means the black bear. I remember that because of Special Agent Oso. I'm sorry. That's what.
Right.
Yeah.
That was all part of the plan.
It was all part of the plan. Hey, there's a lot of other American people there on cots and things like that, and they overhear. I think low-key one of the best characters in the movie.
Walter Huston himself playing Howard.
And he's scruffy, He's very experienced. He's worldly. He knows some things.
And he's very, very fast in talking as well.
He is, and I love it. I love that fast pace.
He's like, go to Mexico? Why, sure there is. Not 10 days from here by rail, pack train, there's mountain grain, the rat gotta come wrong. You get the point.
We'll do the clip, yeah.
1,000 men say go searching for gold. After 6 months, one of them's lucky. 1 out of 1,000. His find represents not only his own labor, but that of 999 others to boot. That's 6,000 months, 500 years, scrabbling over mountains, going hungry and thirsty. After months of sweating yourself dizzy and growing short on provisions and finding nothing, you finally come down to 15,000, then 10. Finally, you say, Lord, let me just find $5,000 worth and never ask for anything more the rest of my life.
So he's very smart. He's kind of grizzled. You know, he's an old guy. He's that classic.
He's still got an energy to him, but he's got much experience in this field.
Kind of Stinky Pete in a way, but
As I said, yeah, there was a lot of inspiration toward him being, you know, he's a very good, you know, character for that, and the voice especially took some inspiration from Walter Houston.
Yeah, and in some of those lighthearted tales that he's telling, there's also a little bit of a hook in it where he's talking about, you know, that gold can be the devil too. I mean, it has a lure about it. You know, they can make people, you know, change, and it'll change people. So,
but he's just talking about it, you know, and the other two are like, hey, they're perking up their ears, sort of. And the scene does end with him saying, you know, I'm gonna dream of sleeping on bags and piles of gold.
Yeah, and Dobbs says it wouldn't be that way with me, you know, because what Howard says is that it'll change you. Like you go for 10,000, but hey, you go for the 25, you go for the 50, you go for the 100.
And also they did ask, hey, if you found so much gold in your life, why aren't you rich? And they're like,
That's the gold. That's what makes us. Never knew a prospector yet that died rich. Make one fortune, shoot a blow in trying to find another. I'm no exception to the rule.
Many reasons. It can get stolen off of you. It can, you can just go like, nope, I'm not gonna grouge for more anymore. Stuff like that.
Yeah, Dobbs says it wouldn't be that way with me. I swear it wouldn't.
I take only what I set out to get. Even if there's still $500,000 worth lying around waiting to be picked up.
Yeah, okay, nice, yeah. And you know that he's full of it. He is going to, you know, some guys go nutty with it, is what Howard says. Murderer is always lurking about. And see, all these different things he says, you're like, dude, are those things going to happen? You know, like, it's kind of hints as to what is to come, which I like that.
So the next morning.
Yes, the next afternoon, Dobbs and Curtin are hanging out in the plaza on those benches again, and they're just kind of dreaming. You know, talking about the warnings about the lust for gold. You know, Dobbs is like, gold can be as much of a blessing as it can be a curse. I'm the right guy, you know, I'm not going to be affected by that curse and everything like that. And you're like, okay. Which I love to see the turn of the guy who thinks that he's the only one who's untouchable from the lure of greed.
I mean, even still, from the very beginning of this movie, he is all about money. He has literally done nothing but seek for money at this point.
Yeah, and while they're hanging out there, they see somebody interesting to them. It's McCormick, and he's coming out of a hotel with a Mexican señorita. She's looking real nice and everything.
He's got a babe on his shoulder, and he's walking out all rich and stuff. And he's just like, he's stuck up. You know what? Let's go fight him and get the money we deserve.
Yeah, and they're like, we want our money. And he's like, let's go have a drink in the canteen. And he's like, okay, I still want the money. You haven't paid us on the contract. If I had the money, you'd get it first thing, he says.
But he didn't.
No. He offers them more contract work, partial payment, blah, blah, blah.
And then this is where commences the bar scene.
We want what's coming to us, and we want it right here and now. Every cent you owe us, or you won't walk out of here. You'll have to be carried out.
The bar fight, yeah.
The fight goes down very dirty. The bar fight scene could have done with music, but on the other side of that coin, it's like, it's showing how raw and not very glamorous it is. But it could have done with some music, though.
Most fights are not glamorous.
It could have done with some music, though. Otherwise, it's just seen as sloppy, too long, stuff like that.
Well, do you think maybe some stings now and again, like when they go bum?
Exactly.
Little stings.
Just like Zelda Breath of the Wild or something. They do actually do that in Zelda, Wind Waker, though. They have, they can cue it up to where when you, swing your sword, it makes a orchestra sting. In this clip, you have to listen very closely to the music. There's a lot of noise that's other than the music as well, so just letting you know. I find that really interesting. But continue.
But this actually, you know, when you can time the orchestra with a fight.
When you can time the orchestra with the fight, yeah, you can add some little stings like that. Like just something little ostinato in the background, keeping it from being silent and, you know, boring and not very feeling to people. But yeah, there are improvements that can be made.
I'm sorry. I like the fight the way it is. It's dirty. It's realistic. Yeah.
And at the end, he pulls out his wallet, he counts the money, and then throws the rest on his face smashed into the floor.
He gives a little bit of money to the bartender and says, "Here's for the
here's for the damages." Oh boy, if Iron Man could have done that in Civil War, then none of this would happen. He would just go, Black Widow, like the building explodes Black Widow and stuff, and then he just goes to the bartender or the president and goes, here's a fork of money for the damages. My goodness, that would have solved everything. Who knows, maybe Thanos wouldn't have appeared on Earth, and the whole Endgame route would have been undone.
So they're outside the bar at a kind of a fountain. They're kind of washing their wounds and their blood off. They're like, okay, we could just, we got paid, that's great, but we're going to be right back in here doing this again. And they start thinking about
the gold.
Could we do it?
Let's go hunt him up right away.
You know anything about gold? He goes, I really don't when it comes down to it. So that means that they need to go
with Howard.
They've got to get picks and spades and pans and donkeys, and Howard can speak Spanish. Which the interesting thing about it is Walter
can't actually speak Spanish. We talked about that earlier.
Yeah, he taught himself Spanish. But
notice how, this scene, the lottery guy comes back and he's like, hey, buzz off again, you're bad. But then he suddenly notices from his words, hey, you've got the winning ticket, right? Not just any old ticket. Well, we have money then. Sweet mama, I've won money. Along those lines, he said.
It was 200. It was that's the kind of sugar Papa likes.
Exactly.
And it was 200 pesos is what he won from the lottery, because he had 150 some odd. Howard said, we have a good bit, but we need just that one little bit more. We need like at least 500 a piece. And then the kid comes around the corner and goes,
Senora, I have the lottery ticket. And then that's just what they needed to get the gold. But notice how the money that they had now would make him very comfortable living, as he has, but he wants to be richer than rich. So instead of keeping, I have like $500, $600 dollars, it's good enough for me to live upon respectively, but instead he's going to be richer than rich and get the gold.
And lighten his cigars with
$100 bills.
He says, well, what a waste. Why don't you use a match? I'm serious.
Why don't you keep the money you have? Oftentimes, there's like TV shows, like there's Brain Games episodes about it where they're pumping up a balloon. Every pump is like $100. The people who decide to go, I need to pump just one more, are often the ones that pop the balloon, because they're being risky. It's a roulette. One more pop could kill you.
And people push it.
People push it a lot. But the people who are conservative actually get their money. Keep that in mind, fellow politicians.
No. He means conservative as far as money, not as far as politics. Anyway, so the next scene, the three of them are in third class on a train headed from Tampico for Durango.
Oh yeah, this was the scene where bandits then came in.
Yes, and they're Indians and mestizos, or half Indian, half Mexican, but whatever people.
So they're just stopping this train, shooting it from horseback.
Right.
The three of them, they do have guns from having supplies for the outback mountains gathering gold. Obviously, you need to defend yourself. But in modern times, you wouldn't normally be able to bring guns in transportation because, you don't want to be able to shoot people. But in this case, they did need it, though.
They were a little bit more open about that in the West at that time.
And especially in this case, they did need it to save themselves and the train passengers, defend them from the bandits, especially where you're going to be in more danger than you are now. But this fact is very fortunate, as normally in modern times, this wouldn't be the case.
Now, the interesting thing is we get the leader of these bandits, and we see him kind of trade shots with Dobbsy. He is called Gold Hat, that's his nickname. He's played by Alfonso Bedoya.
And he is the famous one that says, badges, we ain't got no badges.
We're definitely going to play that clip later.
You're probably going to hear it a million times throughout this episode. Here's another one for good measure.
Badges? We ain't got no badges. We don't need no badges. I don't have to show you any stinking watches.
And another, and layer them like it's an air horn.
That'd be great. So after the bandits are driven away, not too many passengers were killed in the ambush. That's good. There was a big boulder on the track. That's why the train stopped. So they didn't stop just because you could have a little gunshot.
Yeah, the train was still going during this train scene with the bandits, but they did stop eventually because there was a rock in the way. So they had to get off and go out in the mountains.
So they have a map, but it's kind of vague where they're going on the map because it doesn't show whether it's a mountain swamp or a desert. It just shows.
And as does Howard say later in the movie, that when they talk about things very vaguely, make up legends about areas, about the mountain tigers as weed. It's a good point. Because it's like, if something is vague and, they make legends about it, then you know that no one's been here. So there's good gold here.
Yeah, they do make that point.
The tiger's so big and strong they can climb trees with burrs in their mouths. Good. Glad to hear such tall tales, because that means mighty few outsiders have ever set foot there.
He does refer to the mountain as a mother or a woman that gives gifts. So it's almost very kind of respectful, what he's doing. There's a part, I'll tell you, there's a part later where they give respect to the mountain, and as if it's almost like a deity. Of course, Dobbsy kind of goes, whatever.
A Prometheus situation where it's like worship the thing that gives you the fire. But anyway, this is the scene. They're traveling through deserty terrain, a sandstorm, and jungly looking place.
Sweaty, exhausted.
Exactly. But this is one of the first instances we get a good instance of the main theme. It's obviously probably been in a lot more sections previous to this, but this is a pretty good instance to make note of. The variation flipping between heavy and lighthearted. So it's like, the parts where they're tired, and then the parts where it's like all jaunty journey. And we'll play that here.
They're starting to show the cracks in their plan because you start seeing a little bit of bitterness. He starts kind of arguing. He complains about Howard, and Curtin kind of sounds like he's having second thoughts too.
And then there's a good scene to a result of this, but in between then and here is the scene where they find fool's gold on a boulder. A couple boulders.
Yeah, but the way they play it out, it just sounds like they're like, oh my goodness, there's gold streaked rock on the ground and yellow glittering specks. They're splashing water around on it.
They're like, hey, it's gold. We found gold. My goodness, yeah. But then Howard has to give them the bad news. Hey, that's fool's gold.
Plus, it's worthless, and you're kind of get a carload of that stuff. It wouldn't pay you dinner. And he also says, guys, you need to be careful about wasting water because it may almost be like gold out here, more precious than gold out here in the desert.
So it shows that they don't need to care about gold as much as the water that can result from gold.
Yes. So they're going
through jungles and climb mountains so high they rise above the clouds.
It's like they're going through every single rough weather situation.
It's like if the Indiana Jones map transition, except you have to see all 8 million hours of them going through it.
Yeah, but it's actually very, very quick.
It's very quick, but still.
Oh man, they're tired.
And so night falls, they're in a tent, there's a funny scene. It's so funny, they're trying to sleep, and Howard is insisting on beans. He's like, you want some beans? You gotta have some beans. And then he starts playing harmonica right after that.
It's great. He's
experienced and hardy, but he has great spirits, even while they're tired out of their wits. And he's just, like, so lighthearted.
Dobbs is saying that he wants to go back. What's that you say? Go back?
Well, tell my old grandmother. I got two very elegant dead fellows who kick at the first drop of rain and hide in the closet from thunder rumbles. My, what great prospectors.
Exactly, he says this line in the morning. He's just, like, ridiculing them for how they're dumber than dumb, and he's doing a little jig dance, which is very part of his personality.
And he's pounding his feet into the soil that's laced with gold.
He's doing a little jig dance over the gold. He's like, there's gold here. You know, there's fool's gold over there. You're excited about that, but we're on actual gold over here, and you're not even excited at all. You want to go home.
You're so dumb, you don't even see the riches you're treading on with your own feet.
And he's doing a little jig dance. He's like, ha ha ha.
And the gold doesn't look much different than sand.
Yeah, the scene after, he does notice that they're panning for gold, and but he's just panning the gold, and he's like, I thought it would be a lot more glittery. And he's like, that's not actually true, It's valuable, but often you don't see it.
It doesn't glitter until it's refined. That's some other guy's job. All we gotta do is mine it and get it back there.
Gold ain't like stones in a riverbed. It don't cry out to be picked up. No, you gotta know how to recognize it.
In Indiana Jones situation, you're looking for the cup of Christ, and it's a little wooden cup, and it's like, hey, it doesn't sparkle, but it's, the Christ cup, if you get what I mean.
Right. I love that movie. So first off, yeah, they found some stuff, but then you got to keep it secret, keep it safe, and you just know something's going to come up to threaten that, and it does later. But
yeah, and there is over this scene, they're like, hey, we're going to divide the gold, so they divide the gold, but they look at him suspiciously while he's doing that, and there are some of the seeds of doubt and greed being sown.
They're weighing the gold shares, and Howard says that the gold dust they've collected is about $5,000 worth. These little cracks start to form in their relationship.
But then, over this scene at the night as well, they're just trying to protect their gold in the little bags. Oh, right, but before that, as well, is the scene where they're going for the gold. Dobbs.
Right.
Calvin Hobbs.
Right.
Dobbs, he finds himself in a mine. The mine collapses. I talked about this earlier, Curtin. He's turned around, about to head out, go away. He's not gonna save him until the music kicks in so perfectly as he turns right back around and saves his brother.
Yeah, it kind of shows that Curtin has a heart.
He could have left him, but he didn't. And the music portrays this so perfectly.
Yeah, and it's I love it. And the thing is, it lets you recognize that there are some good elements of Curtin, whereas as we go, we see that anything good about Dobbs is getting eroded away. After they measure out this yellow sandy material into 3 parts.
Technically gray, because it's monochrome film.
Yeah, Dobbs leaves the circle, the campfire. He's going to go hide his loot. See, they have to go hide it. And then you got to go to sleep, right? And so you think, okay, what if somebody gets up and goes, well, I'm going to go pee or something.
And then they go dig up that gold or try and find it. Or what if in the morning you try and find it and it's gone? Or what if you forget where it's headed?
You're like, where are you going? Well, I'm just going to the bathroom. Oh really? Well, I'm going to follow you. Just mistrust, But okay, so they start to talk about what they're going to do with the money. Howard says he wants to own a small business, a general store, and enjoy his later years without ever prospecting again, which that's...
just something very quiet, very peaceful compared to the life he's lived. A gentle way out.
And what does Curtin want to do? And he actually has his own motif at this part where he talks about...
He wants to plant fruit trees. Apple orchards, stuff like that. I think, did he say oranges or something?
Peaches or something like that. Yeah.
Well, aren't you glad I didn't say banana?
You're quite a peach. So,
you might have said that I mangoed the podcast.
Oh, it's been mangoed. And you get this nice motif played underneath, when he's talking about, just watching the trees put on leaves and watching the fruit come into blossom and bear. And the fruit gets big and ripe, ready for picking. That sounds nice, And what does Dobbs say? He's like, I want, comforts at a spa, haberdashery, restaurant.
Dozen of everything. Then I'm going to a swell cafe and order everything on the bill of fare. And if it ain't just right, or maybe even if it is, I'm going to ball the waiter out and make him take the whole thing back.
What's next on the program?
What would be?
He's got great ambition compared to the others who are trying to do, something good for society.
No, it's not just that.
Yeah, not just that, though.
It's something good that if you keep it going can last. I mean, if you
Exactly.
If you have a farm.
You make a general store, it can help out people. You make an apple orchard, it can help out people, even if you're dead. That's also another point. But Hobbs wants to languish around in
Dobbs.
pleasures. Dobbs. I'm just gonna call him Hobbs. He's a little tiger in my heart, I guess.
Call him Hobbs. Yeah, he talks about, and he says he's gonna go to a Turkish bath and sweat and soak till he gets all the grime and dirt out of his system. I'm like, buddy, that grime and that dirt is on your soul.
The night everyone is very restless, a tiger's roar is heard, which is funny. From what our previous conversation just was. It was secretly him, the tiger. Dobbs, that is.
Curtin is counting his sacks of gold, and it's hidden in a hollow tree. And he comes back to the tent just as Dobbs is about to leave. Howard is tired of all this nonsense. He's like, if you guys will stop worrying about your goods and just go to bed. And they're muttering to themselves.
Yeah, he's not really too suspicious of anything, but all the rest of them are just, playing games of hide-and-seek and cat and mouse, and he's just like, will you guys just please not?
Yeah, and they need more provisions, and so they...
And so in the morning, that's when Dobbs goes out on a burro to the next town for provisions.
Yeah, but they think, it's so his partners can discover the location of the bags.
He's like, they're gonna make him go off somewhere so they can go get his gold while he's not there.
Yeah, exactly. And so there's a scene where Curtin sees a big yellow and black Gila monster lizard. They're actually venomous, so they have to get a good grip on you to get you. He crawls under a large boulder, and he picks up a piece of wood to turn over the large rock, and he unwittingly stumbles upon his hiding place. Dobbs is mad, and he draws his gun on him, and he says, I don't believe you that you're only prying up the rock to get a look at the lizard. Curtin dares him to reach under the rock, and then he takes the challenge, and he gets by the rock. He hesitates to put his hand in, and he starts to put his hand in and pulls it right back out. And he says, I'll kill you, dirty thieving. And they take the gun from him, and they turn up the rock, and there's the poisonous lizard on top of the bags of gold dust. So they shoot the lizard, and it dies.
Well, no, it's a Gila monster. Don't say they killed the lizard. I cared.
Oh, I'm sorry. That
They killed the Gila monster. Okay, hear me out. I'm probably just a sucker for bass clarinet, but seriously, though, this rendition of the main theme in bass clarinet after the while his gold is discovered. Honestly, it's so great. Just listen to it. I just wanted to put this in here.
All right, so Curtin is actually sent in town for supplies. And
so he's the one that goes into the supplies.
Yes. And interestingly enough, there's another American there that's asking way too many questions, and he's way too suspicious about what's going on.
Oh, you talking about Cody?
Yeah.
Yeah, Cody approaches them in the camp as well. He approaches Curtin first.
And
then they go back to the camp together, and he goes, hey, this is Cody. And so that's another another pawn in the whole game of chess that they're like, oh, this changes up things. Another person on the hunt, suspicious.
Okay, so Curtin says that he's been followed, and just as they are...
So Cody comes in, they're suspicious, they're sort of welcoming him in. He hasn't talked about gold yet until they get around the campfire, and he goes, this place is mighty good ground for something else. Gold.
Right.
And then that's where they're like, ooh, he's in the game now.
We're full up. No vacancies, understand?
This is the most dangerous game, but on steroids.
Right. So it's in the morning, and Cody has made coffee, and Dobbs is begrudging him just even the water to make the coffee. And he's like, I thought we were among civilized men who wouldn't begrudge me a little fresh water. Who's not civilized, he says.
Yeah, because the thing is, he wasted their water for coffee. And coffee isn't as good as water, if you know. Coffee is not really great for out the doors. It dehydrates you as well, so it's useless to them. But it's, I thought we could be civilized and use a bit more of the water just because we're civilized men. And then Dobbs is like, who's not civilized?
Yeah, exactly. He's unwelcome, and they're not really making him welcome at all.
And so Cody retorts, he's like, hey, there's 3 things you could do. Kill me, you could run me off, or you could take me in as a partner. He's like, hey, there's only a certain amount of choices you could do. Either I'm dead, I run off, or I join you. And otherwise, it's not going to be favorable to you unless I stay.
Yeah, and interestingly enough, they do get the bandits coming, which kind of changes their mindset. They're like, okay, let's focus on that. So they go onto the rock ridge. They've got guns drawn.
Oh wait, did they decide to kill him?
Yeah, they did, and they changed their mind about what they were going to do with their guns. Oh yeah, we're gonna.
Yeah, they were just like, "Hey, it's up to you, Curtin." And Curtin is like, "You would all side with Dobbs, and let's execute him."
Right. But then the bandits show up, and it kind of changes everything.
So instead of shooting him, they shoot the bandits.
The bandits did not want gold, though. They just want guns and ammunition.
And then this is where the bandits come in. Gold Hat as well. He's like, "Hola, senor. We are federales. The mountain police."
If you're the police, where are your badges?
Badges? We ain't got no badges. We don't need no badges. I don't got to show you any stinking badges. And that's the famous line.
Yeah, exactly. So Gold Hat is telling Cody.
He's like, we don't want to harm you. He's like, why don't you try to be a little more polite? Give us your gun, and we'll leave you in peace. But this doesn't end really much in peace. He's like, look here, amigo, you got the wrong idea. We don't want to get you gone for nothing. We want to buy it. The gun, that is.
Yeah, and he's Gold Hat saying, I have a gold watch with a gold chain. Yeah.
But the gun is much more useful than a gold watch, though. But funnily enough, Dobbs is just like, I'll rather have the gun than the watch. Which is, even though he had been wanting gold, he'd rather keep the gun.
Howard is a great shot, though. Howard shoots the gold watch. So there is a fierce battle, and Cody is killed in the first round of gunfire with a bullet through his neck.
And this is where they find in him a letter. They find his name is James Cody. He's from Texas. And they also get a picture of his wife, a letter. He's talking all about, They look at this letter and they go, he's much more admirable of a person than we thought. He had a family.
Yeah, and he actually did have, like, a farm. With fruit, all kind of stuff.
He was happy, and everyone in his family loved him. He was a good dad and a good husband.
And the wife is saying, the fruit trees are all in bloom.
And Curtin was like, oh my goodness, this resonates with me.
Yeah, exactly.
And Sarah, like, ultimate regret for Cody's death. And wanting to kill him in the first place, because they realized there was much more to him than the surface seemed, than their suspicions did. If they had just dropped their suspicions, and looked at him as a person, if they looked at each other as people, then they would have dropped this silly game and been like, this dude is more than he seems. He's not... You get my point, right?
So they have collected about $35,000 apiece. They all agree, well, begrudgingly, to kind of call it quits, leave the mountain.
They have enough money for the adventure, so they decide to put them in sacks, hide sacks, and load them on the backs of their donkeys, their burros, and ride them off.
Yeah, and that's where they say goodbye to the mountain, kind of like
They say goodbye to the mountain. It's like saying goodbye to your wife, exactly.
Yeah. Curtin, he decides something very decent. He decides that he's going to give Cody's widow and his son a fourth, because Cody helped save their lives, and Howard agrees.
Exactly. He resonated so much with him, and he's like, he was actually happy. He had a fruit farm. He was so good. I'm going to give the wife and the son their comforts from their mornings and stuff, and some money as well in compensation.
Dobbs is not like that. He thinks that he's...
Yeah, Dobbs is like, what on earth are you doing, man?
Yeah,
You're wasting your money on this dude who's already dead and whom we didn't really need to interact with at all.
Yes, and interestingly enough, in the darkness, we get the Indians.
Yes, the scene where the Indian tribe, in quotations, obviously, because obviously we used to refer to them as Indians, and now it is better to call them Native American. Sometimes we may fail though. So
yes, but these are people of, like, I guess Mayan, Aztec descent. They're a little bit further out in the country.
They have a tribe. And they're going out in seek of, they have a child in need of a medicine man.
He drowned in the river.
He's
unconscious. Curtin and Dobbs, he tells him to watch after his goods, because he's going to go...
Yeah, Howard decides to go help the tribe. while they go off, which is the one thing that sort of sets off the dynamic, that it's like the one dude left the gold in the reaches of both of them, and then this is where they start their 1v1 duel of sorts, this section of the movie.
Yes. And so, but it's interesting that Howard is like, you know what? This is, the life of someone they love. What is treasure? For them, it was this boy, and they just were like, we don't want to lose this. This is a son of someone in our village, and we care for him a great deal. We don't want to lose him.
He wanted worth in their eyes for helping them, to be able to give something to people, and for them to have gratitude in that. In this case, we do get to see them. He treats the boy, and they're all staring around him as he's doing this task. He's finally awake. He wakes them, and they're all just like,
almost like a miracle, yeah.
And he does end up getting his gratitude in being on a hammock.
Oh, that's not yet. See, what happens is Howard comes back and to Curtin and Dobbs and explains to them what...
Oh, yeah, he's explaining to them what happened, and this is when we get to see a scene of that.
Yeah, and then the Indians show up while he's talking to them, and they insist that he comes back because we have to pay back a debt to you for helping us. If we don't, then the saints in heaven will be angry with us.
Oh, right. So this is where that scene comes in.
Yeah, he's like, even if it's by force, they're going to take us with him. So he says, I'm going to go back with them to receive their gratitude. You can keep my goods until I can rejoin you a few days later in Durango.
But unfortunately, Dobbs is like, the saints in heaven will be angry with you? Ha 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 ha. Ultimate disrespect. And then they're just like, they don't like him. And he deserves it.
Right, exactly.
Deserved.
Yeah, exactly. And so Howard rides away with the Indians, and they are left without him. And all the different suspicions and the greed and the evil and the mistrust start really festering and start coming out to the surface. So, Curtin, he's like, I'll carry his goods. Ain't it always his bros that won't march in line? What was in your head when you offered to carry his goods for him that he couldn't manage by himself? He knew what he was doing when he turned him over to us. Mighty cute of him, wasn't it? So they start bickering at each other and, throughout. And then Dobbs is like, well, I'm just going to take Howard's stuff. Don't be a sap, right?
Right.
Yeah, he keeps saying, I see what you're going to do. You're going to bump me off, in the middle of the night. You're going to kill me. The treachery just starts really coming in after without the... I think the balancing, Howard represents the balance to me between the two characters, and without that, it just
exactly
coming in. So you got the good, the kindness.
It's like when your mother leaves the room, that's when the bickering starts happening, and that's when the cookie jars get stolen.
Oh yeah.
When the cat is away, the mouse come out and play, if I recall.
Right.
In this case, the mice will kill each other.
Yeah, there's a situation that happens where Dobbs draws his gun on Curtin, and Curtin knocks the gun away. He disarms him and draws his own gun on him.
So they're all like starting squabbling with the guns. The guns are out.
Yeah, Curtin empties the bullets from Dobbs's gun, which is interesting because with the gun empty of bullets, that comes into play later.
They're just cat and mousing, the clouds. At this time, the clouds would start going. If this was a cartoon, but the clouds aren't going quite yet, but they sure are exhausting each other throughout day and night.
Yeah, and they don't sleep. They're like, I'm not gonna sleep. I'm gonna sit here and watch you.
And Dobbs is just getting more and more deranged and freaky as this goes on.
Right, exactly. Eventually, Curtin just he goes,
Yeah, Curtin can't stand this any longer, so he's just finally droops over, sort of giving up.
And there's a point where he marches him off screen, away from the fire, and you hear gunshots, and you're like, oh no, what happened? He comes back and gets by the fire. He's talking to himself the whole time. It's he's starting to show his almost like a madness. He's
had this madness going on with him and Curtin in his final moments. He shoots him. And then he's just he's cackling by the campsite.
But Curtin is shown, and Curtin shows him stirring, so he's not dead. But Dobbs is like, did I really shoot him or did he just fall down? I don't know.
Did I actually kill him in my spite, in my greed?
Conscience. What a thing. If you believe you got a conscience, it'll pester you to death. But if you don't believe you got one, what can it do to you? Makes me sick, all this talking and fussing about nonsense.
It would only be great if I had a conscience, but a conscience is a terrible thing. I don't have that conscience, so I'm fine.
Yeah, so he's like, I don't have a conscience. Who needs a conscience?
Now, yeah, and you see this really good thing where he's staring out.
Like he's starting to get paranoid about the actually go too far.
I was struck by the fact that the fire rises. It's almost like a hellish.
So the fire is under him, a la Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde ending.
Yeah, like the flames of hell.
But these are some really great scenes. The character in there, he's just like doubting, and he's like getting deranged. His arc, man, as a person.
Yeah, and he did say, I'm going to dig a hole for him first thing in the morning. So in the morning, well, you find out that Curtin's shooting was not fatal, but he is badly wounded. He crawls to safety. He is found by some Indian villagers, which plays into, I guess...
But he does leave him for dead, though.
Yeah.
He's just like, he's dead. I'm gonna go bury him. He doesn't find him, so he's like, whatever.
Yeah. The next morning, he goes, and he's panicked because he starts talking to himself about whether he should bury, the body. He doesn't, he can't locate it.
Are the animals gonna get to him? Is that fine? Just watch this movie. If we can't really state it better enough, watch this movie and hear the dialogue and the visuals in its proper place, and then go and see for yourself how his performance is so good in this role.
And Humphrey Bogart's performance in this is really good. He's talking to himself, just really, he's cracking, he's losing it. All the things that he's going through.
And this is probably how someone would realistically react. Apart from the fact that he's become a deranged maniac, which is not really something that happens every day, but you get my point.
No, it does show
very realistic emotions,
and it does show a alternate to that, because you see the life and the situation that's going on with Dobbs, and then you see Howard relaxing,
all right,
in a hammock.
Howard in the hammock. And the girls are beside him, fanning him, stuff like that.
Oh, he gets watermelon and tequila, man. That's great.
Watermelon tequila.
And people are diving into a pool of water. It's fantastic. So the Indians who discovered Curtin, they have shown up, and they bring Howard to him, and they take care of him. And Curtin says, "I'll pull out of this if only to get that guy." So, Howard understands, the greed and the violence that Dobbs chose in his heart. Okay, so Howard decides to go in search of Dobbs and get the goods back. Curtin, goes with him. They bring a posse of villagers, and they find a dead donkey from Dobbs's burro train.
And then we get a scene of Dobbs. He's just very, very dry. Very dry throat. He's just like staggering in there in the desert, and that's where the bandits come upon him. And this is a very good scene.
And they have the gold hidden underneath these furs, because
the hide bags.
The hide bags, right? And so what ends up happening is Gold Hat and his guys are just thinking, hey, we can just take these burros and the hides and make money from that. They don't even know the gold's underneath it, but Dobbs does, and he's willing to do anything to stop him, and they kill him.
Indeed. This scene is very great. From the very beginning, where it's just like he's drinking from the watering hole, and then he sees the bandit's reflection, and he goes, oh no. All the way to the scene, all the way through the scene of his encounter and his eventual death is all very great scene.
Also, his boots and his clothes and everything are taken by the bandits, which actually comes back to bite them because they wear those clothes later, and that's what the Federales kind of use that to kind of go, hey, wait a minute, you stole these off of
We did talk about earlier, there was a scene at Dobbs' death where his head would roll down as one of the shots. They did mask this out because it would be a little bit too much for the code, at the time, because this is code territory, people. So that would be a bit too gruesome.
This is post Hays Code. The interesting thing is they dump out the sand, what they think is sand.
But it's actually the gold.
It's actually the gold, and so they think it's worthless.
It's the gold in the sand, so they dump it out. And then there's this whole drawn-out scene of them taking the burros and trying to sell the burros to people, and I don't think they really accepted it.
No.
It didn't go really well.
They saw that they were wearing the clothes of the guys.
So they're like, "Hey, we recognize those clothes. You stole them somewhere."
Yeah, and the villagers even like turn against them and the bandits, and the federales come in and kind of go, they know what's going on, and so they capture them, and they
capture them and execute them.
They're making them dig their own graves, so to speak.
And Gold Hat, his final words to them is that he wanted to wear his sombrero during his death, which he does. However, Howard and Curtin come upon the scene, and they see his hat rolling in the wind. A very good shot. And as well, the storekeeper comes out, sort of. They go to the storekeeper and ask around, and they're like, "Oh, Dobbs is dead. The bandits got him. He says that the goods are safe in his office." But they then go to that office, and then they're like, "Oh, we'll search everything. There's no gold. Here's this. Where's the gold?"
Yeah, well, the thing is, you remember where we saw the hat, and it was blowing? It's that north wind, and the north wind has blown all of that gold dust, and it's just all over the place. There's no way you're going to get it back.
Away.
So this speech at the end of the movie, you get from the wisdom of Walter. He says, "Oh, laugh,
Curtin, old boy. It's a great joke played on us by the Lord or fate or nature, whatever you prefer. But whoever or whatever played it certainly had a sense of humor.
The gold has gone back to where we found it." And then Curtin starts laughing with him, because what are you going to do? This is worth 10 months of suffering and labor, that joke is. So they are back where they started from with nothing just about, except I do think that they have learned some things about themselves. I do think that Curtin, with some prodding from Walter, has realized that he could, go to that widow's house where all the plantation is with the fruit trees, because that's exactly like what his dream was, what his fond memory from when he was younger. And he could go there. This is what I saw. I saw him helping her out, and then the romance part of it would come in. He would fall in love with her, and they'd settle down and make a life together. That's what I saw in my head. I was like, you know what? Yeah, that'd work out.
Dad's headcanon confirmed.
That's my dad headcanon.
But honestly, this is one of the best movie scenes of this movie, because it's like, earlier you were talking about the schemes of man, how they always fail, sort of. And it's like, this is realistic in a sense, because oftentimes you don't get the gold in real life. So it's just a cruel joke played by mankind, he says.
Well, also the evil greed that was in Dobbs's heart is what messed it up. Honestly, if Dobbs had done right by Curtin and done right by Walter, they could have left out of there with a decent amount. But he was just constantly paranoid and all the stuff. He said, "Oh, that won't happen to me," and it did. I think that Walter has seen enough of human nature over the years, and also with the gold business and all that he's realized that can happen. He even says that at the beginning.
He's just given up. He's just laughing with Curtin on with their backs to the cliffside. It's just very, very real. Where it's just like they didn't get the gold at the end. It's a unique twist ending of sorts, where it's like, oh, well, they didn't get the gold at the end, but the whole point was sort of this journey and learning and stuff.
Well, Curtin asks Howard, my headcanon is probably right, because they're saying, what they're going to do. So Curtin says, what's next for you? And he says, "Well, I'm fixed as far as I'm concerned as a medicine man. I'll have 3 meals a day, 5 if I want them, and a roof over my head and a drink every now and then to warm me up."
So he's satisfied with the Native American people. Curtin is satisfied with his life, sort of. He's got dreams as well. And it's just like, they continue on from this. as well, but this is just an ending that truly strikes you in the face as being very different. I mean, there are also very many other movies that do way different kinds of endings as well, but this is one that just particularly strikes you in your heart. Honestly, I've been watching this movie a lot, which is why I've been talking about it a lot, because it's just, what it accomplishes is just so rechanneled into something great. So, John Huston's just work at doing this film, he had an idea for what it would be, and it's just, he played with humanity, and the ending really does fit and encapsulate this movie so perfectly, and it's honestly probably one of the most famous endings of all time. I don't know, there's probably many other endings famous of all time. You know, Christmas Carol, that's pretty topical as it's Christmas. You know, God bless us, everyone.
Yeah. Where Scrooge is going out and he's just, you know, he's been completely changed and altered. My main regret with this movie is that I didn't see it earlier than last year, or this year.
Yeah, we watched it all new together, and then that's when we realized that this is a truly
awesome.
special movie. But the next movie we're doing, however, is very, very special to a lot of people.
I also didn't see that one. I think I may have seen it in passing years ago and didn't think a lot of it. And I think, honestly, the fact that I'm older and I have children has really made me appreciate, and also learning a lot about Charles Lawton and learning about him. And
unique movie that we're doing next is Charles Lawton's first and only film. And it is a very special case. As we'll talk about, there are many different ideas that he plays with, and he adapted it very uniquely. And I mean, this is his only work that he's done, and he's poured his heart into it.
And it's a favorite. It's a favorite.
It is a cult classic
of many different famous directors. They will point to this and say, "This is a big inspiration for me," and it's underrated. I'm saying, well, it's on the AFI 100 years of 100 movies. I mean, it's same as Treasure of Sierra Madre. I'd put it up there with Treasure of Sierra Madre and Citizen Kane. They're all on the same list, so maybe you should do yourself a favor and see that movie. But we will talk about it the next time, and that'll give you a good idea as to what you're
because with Night of the Hunter, there is a lot of definite play here. There's a lot of things in play, like Robert Mitchum's role is just absolutely perfect. It's
iconic.
It's very iconic, as we'll see here. There's many parodies
and
many things that reference it. And Charles Lawton is also a pretty popular state in history. I mean, we talked about him in Island of Dr. Moreau, and he was pretty good as Dr. Moreau.
Absolutely.
It's pretty solid. I mean, not probably the iconic Dr. Moreau, but still.
Yeah. Did we not see him also in The Old Dark House?
Yes, we did.
Yes, and there's a lot of different people that we have seen and we're going to see again. But I will leave you with a couple things, and if you don't mind. There's a quote from The Treasure of the Sierra Madre by B. Traven, who we don't really know who that is. That's a pen name. It says, "The treasure which you think not worth taking trouble and pains to find, this one alone is the real treasure you are longing for all your life." That's a great quote, and it's a really good thing, a capper to leave this episode with. But one more thing about this episode is this episode's coming out the week of Christmas. A lot of Americans and people all over the world celebrate Christmas, and we want to both. I can't speak for you, William, but I want to wish all our listeners a happy holidays and a Merry Christmas.
And Merry Hanukkah and Kwanzaa, and even if you don't have enough money for a Christmas tree, you can sure put a stick out in the middle of the woods, stand around it, and call it Festivus officially.
For the rest of us, have a great whatever you want to call this. But for me, it's Christmas, and I can't speak for William, but I'm sure you celebrate it as Christmas too.
And we'll probably leave you with some great music and maybe some clips of our reaction to this great end. Would also fit here as well.
Yes, and also, if you listen very closely, we might even leave you with a little bit of Walter...
Howard is his character.
Howard playing his harmonica to kind of let us go out. But yeah, we'll play some of those if you guys want. And have a good one and a safe one.
Bye.
Bye.
I would not have expected that.
There's
sitting there staring at each other, like falling asleep. Just afraid somebody will take something.
Well, it's a dog-eat-dog world.
Don't forget to open your third eye and telepathically message us at cinefanpod@gmail.com. Set your chronoscope dial to the future setting and peruse cinematicfanpodcast.wordpress.com. Hunker over your ham radio as your keen ears listen for the ghostly voices tweeting on our Twitter at CinematicFanta1. Exchange all of your money into Republic credits and donate at our Patreon page at patreon.com/cinefanpodcast. Ending transmission now.